You've probably seen the headlines about the new home buying rules requiring buyer-broker agreements early in the process. A recent Washington Post article rounded up examples of these agreements from around the country, and what stood out to me was not so much about the paperwork, but the negotiating ideas that the article surfaced for buyers. When you see how different these agreements can be, you'll realize that you don't have to sign whatever contract your agent hands you. The NAR settlement was very clear that buyer-broker agreements are required before touring homes. A few guiding principles were set, such as how compensation is to be defined, but the court order did not create one national form. That left brokers and realtor associations to devise their own versions of what the court meant, usually writing agreements that protect agents more than home buyers. The Washington Post article gives us a couple of great ideas where a conversation with your agent might start. One takeaway from the article is how much uncertainty there still is about when sellers decide whether or not to pay the buyer's agent. Before the settlement, sellers decided their total commission and defined it in the listing agreement, and then a share of that commission was offered to the buyer's broker through the MLS. Today, post-commission lawsuit settlement, sellers aren't legally required to pay any portion of the buyer's brokerage fees. Some still will, to attract more buyers, but others will wait until they've seen the offers that roll in. So what does that mean for you? These days, you'll sign a buyer-broker agreement that defines compensation for your agent as the home buyer. And if you cannot pay that commission out of your own funds at closing, make sure your agent knows that compensation has to be paid by the seller, and that term needs to be written into any offer you make on a property. And then you have to be ready to walk away if the seller won't accept that term. Your agent might call ahead before you see a home to ask about whether the seller will consider paying the agent's fee. And the seller or the listing agent might even make a certain statement about how that will be handled. But remember, things change quickly when offers start coming in. What your agent was told at the beginning can end up being irrelevant at offer time, depending on what the offers say. Know that you can add a term to your offer that says the seller will pay your agent, or you move on to the next property. You are not trapped or required to come out of your own pocket to pay the buyer just because you signed a buyer-broker agreement up front. But make sure your agent knows about the situation so that offers can be crafted accordingly. Another section in the article quotes consumer advocates suggesting that buyers push for flat fee arrangements. That's creative, but in practice, the best agents often prefer a percentage because that arrangement scales with effort and price. And flat fee agents often move on what I call island time, and home buying rarely works on island time. You have to be in a pretty strong buyer's market to get away with island time in a real estate transaction. If you're determined to pay a flat fee, at least understand that a higher flat fee, stronger agents, while a lower one may not. The article also mentions administrative or junk fees. These fees can be truly considered junk fees, but sometimes they're meant to offset lower commission, or maybe they make sense in a slow market where an agent will spend more time helping you achieve your goals. What matters is transparency. Understand every fee and its purpose. Strike anything that doesn't make sense or can't be explained logically by your agent. And just know that there is rarely a good reason for any kind of junk fee if you're already paying a standard commission and will be closing within the next 90 days. One of the points in the article that I wholeheartedly agree with is the warning about dual agency. If one person represents both sides, there are real limits on what they can disclose or recommend. You can absolutely decide upfront that you don't don't want dual agency or any other agent conflicts in your deal, and have that noted in your agreement. A common conflict that I see in a lot of these agreements is a broker reserving the right to represent competing buyers on the same property. Does that sound like something you want as part of your deal? Narrow the clause to say that your agent represents you and you only on any property on which you make an offer. The article also touched on termination. That is, how long you're locked in and how you can exit the agreement. Termination is one of my core 5 clauses because it defines your flexibility. I'm all for setting up an escape route, but don't make a habit of agent hopping. The smarter move is to vet your agent before you're signing an agreement. That is exactly what I teach in my Buyer Agent Game Plan course. Find your unicorn agent and lock them in with a fair contract and price that keep both of you invested in a successful outcome. The article ends with thoughts on arbitration. And I agree that's a clause that buyers really need to slow down and read carefully. Decide whether arbitration fits your comfort level for resolving disputes. It's not automatically good or bad, but it is a clause that's binding once you sign that contract. Nobody wants to go into a contract planning for an unhappy ending, but it can happen. Plan accordingly. The big takeaway from this article, and hopefully from my comments today, is that buyers have real choices when it comes to buyer-broker representation. You don't have to sign the agreement that your agent puts in front of you. Each of these examples I mentioned today points to a negotiation idea that you can discuss with your agent before you commit. And the best way to focus that negotiation is to understand the core 5 clauses that always matter: geographic area, duration, agency relationship, compensation, and termination. Everything else in that agreement deserves a look, but most of those extras exist to protect the broker, not you. Push back on having them in the agreement at all. Inside my agency agreement decoder course, we walk through multiple real agreements, and I show you how I would negotiate each one from a home buyer's perspective. The Washington Post article gives buyers a great starting point for understanding the new home buying rules, but real confidence comes from knowing what's standard, what's optional, and what protects you. Now that you've seen the possibilities, are you ready to flip the leverage and negotiate like a boss? I've got 3 advanced strategies for turning your buyer-broker agreement into a tool, not a trap. And you'll find them in the video on your screen right now.